mom of two. She works as a Saturday school teacher. She's the co-director of Masjid Noor Summer Camp and is also on the fundraising committee at Masjid Noor. She went to William Patterson University in New Jersey and double majored in journalism and political science. So without further ado, Sister Nazek. Oh, everyone move up. So like if you're sitting in the mat, just come up forward, please. Thank you.
Nice curvature.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As the sister said, please feel free to move forward. And mashallah, it's a small group, so I invite it to be more of a discussion than a lecture. Like by no means is this a lecture. So if you guys kind of feel like you want to ask a question to clarify something, I think that the group is small enough that we do it, as we're going through it, then at the end, and inshallah we'll benefit more that way. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Okay, so today, inshallah, what I wanted to talk about, and what I was asked to talk about, was part of kind of like a series that I was working on called Signs of a Believer. And what the focus will be is the sign of a believer in the way that believer sacrifices for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so first I'd like to talk about a little bit about why this is the sign of a believer and what exactly do we mean by sacrifice. So sacrifice here, I want to be very clear. It's funny that on the way here, I was having a discussion with my husband, and he started going into semantics, and that's not really called sacrifice, and his native language is Arabic, and I was like, you're just not understanding me. In any case, let's inshallah define what sacrifice is exactly, and we'll get a better idea of what that is as we go along, inshallah. So sacrifice is your letting go of something, giving up something for something else, right? Nobody gives up something that they value. Not that you have a right to. There's a big difference. This is not something that you have a right to. This is something that you value. Giving up something that you value for something else that is more valuable to you. Because you're not going to give it up unless that's human nature. It's a law. You're not going to give it up unless you believe that you're getting something back in return. And the premise here that we need to work on before moving forward is that the Muslim believes that when we work for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you sacrifice, when you let go of something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that your reward lies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you don't really have that internalized, if you don't really understand that and believe it and know it deep down inside, where it's not a question in your heart, then it's very hard to move forward. That is the first step, that you understand that your reward lies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is this reward that we're talking about? And I think that the nature of each person will kind of let them gravitate in a different way as to the reward that they think about. A lot of people would think my reward is the akhirah, right? My reward is to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my akhirah and to attain Jannat al-Firdaus, inshallah. That is without doubt. That is without doubt that you receive reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your akhirah when you work and you sacrifice and you strive in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that is a completely other, another topic in itself, and goes without saying. But the point that I would also like to make is that the reward that you receive is the strengthening of your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this dunya. And that is something that you also need to seek. Because if you do not reap the rewards of that, if you do not begin to reap the rewards of a satisfying, fulfilling relationship with your Creator, with the source that is the source of everything that is good, with the source of mercy, with the source of infinite perfection, then it is hard for you to move forward in your sacrifice, in your good deeds. And so, inshallah, that's kind of like what we are talking about when we talk about sacrifice, letting go of the things of this dunya, and we will talk about some of those things in order to strengthen your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have a solid connection with Him in this dunya, and receive a sakina in your heart from that, to receive a satisfaction in your heart from that, to receive a pleasure in your heart from that, inshallah. Why sacrifice? If you think about your relationships in the dunya, it will make more sense. When you have a friendship, nobody has a one-way friendship, right? If you have a friendship and you're always doing something for somebody, and you're constantly the one that's coming through, constantly the one that's calling that person, constantly the one that's concerned about them, and they're not having that same action and sentiment on the other side, then that's not really, if you continue to sacrifice for that relationship and you're not reaping anything in return, then you're not going anywhere with that, right? But a relationship of the dunya goes both ways, and there's nothing wrong with that. A relationship of the dunya goes both ways. You help your friend helps you. You check up on your friend checks up on you. You hang out with them, they hang out with you. When you give to that person, and you sacrifice for that person in many ways in order to strengthen your relationship. And so in order to receive a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to sacrifice of the dunya, right? You have to sacrifice of the things of the dunya to receive from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we'll go into some detail, inshallah, about what that means. And I will classify the sacrifices into two different kinds of sacrifice: tangible sacrifices and intangible sacrifices. Tangible sacrifices are more obvious, and you can measure them, and they are easier in that you can measure them, right? So the first one is your time, sacrificing your time. Your time is something that can be measured. It has a standard of measurement in minutes and hours and days. And when you think about your time in this dunya, it's really important for you to step back and evaluate what it is that you're spending your time on. Especially in the society that we live in, and as you get older, this only becomes more and more true. When you get married, and when you have children, and when you have a full-time job, and you have a house and a family, and relationships, and a mother and a father, and a community to serve, you become really tied up in that, and the time passes you by without, I'm sure many of you feel it now, but trust me, it is only multiplied many, many times in the future, when the time is just passing you by and you don't realize it. The Muslim does not live in this way. Every time, every minute that goes by, you do not get that minute back. Every hour that goes by, you do not get that hour back. Every minute you will be accountable for how you spent that minute. Every day you will be accountable for how you spent that day, and you do not get it back, and you do not know when is your last day. This is something that we all know, but it's not something that we really understand, that we really internalize. The times that we feel this the most are, God forbid, when somebody close to you passes, and you really begin to evaluate that somebody has left this earth and has returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I remember very clearly that in my searching, in my beginning to kind of become a seeker of knowledge and really searching more and more about my deen. I didn't really grow up like in a family or culture in which people were very religious at all. And so I kind of very, very, very slowly came to this on my own. I remember very clearly, I was 18 years old, and a friend of my sister's who was a sister of my friend passed away. She was 23 years old, and she got sick, and 3 days later she passed away. And it was and I didn't really even know her that well, to be honest. It was a life-altering moment for me. And I remember being very, very, very affected by this, because I thought to myself very clearly, that could have been me, and I'm not ready to go. I'm not ready to go by any means whatsoever, and I certainly hope that I would not go in the state that I was in at that time. And so it is times like this which are actually a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that help us to reflect upon how are we spending our days and our time. You need to chart how you spend the hours of your day. There's so much that you can do, and mashallah, like you guys are MSA, there's so much that you can do that is obviously for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are a deen, we have a deen of faith and deeds, faith and good deeds. There is no place in the Quran in which you will see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about faith without good deeds. And that's why we're talking about sacrifice, because it is the way in which you act upon your faith. It is one way in which you act upon your faith. And so measure your time. And those things are all good. These good deeds, working for the MSA, working for your masjid, working for your community, serving people, these are all good, and these are all good for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But don't forget to take some time to sit and reflect and make dhikr, and just to hear your thoughts. It's really, really important to be able to spend that just pure, personal ibadah time every day, inshallah. The next tangible item is money or wealth. Anything that is a measure of wealth, and different people classify that in different ways. I recently, alhamdulillah, was extremely fortunate in that I was able to make the Hajj this past Hajj, and I learned something very valuable, and I found it absolutely stunning just upon myself that so many times you make dhikr and you make salah and you say dua, and you don't necessarily internalize it, and it just snaps in you like this. And you know, all of us, the youngest child, if you asked him, you know, where does wealth come from? Where do you get, you know, where does money come from? The child will tell you, the Muslim child that is raised in Islam will tell you that, oh, everything we have comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything we have comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the child still thinks that they own that thing, right? And I finally came to the understanding after, subhanAllah, of days saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik, like literally saying this for days, and it just clicked in my head when you know, as that saying goes, when you say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inna lahul mulk wa lahul hamd, that it is not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us wealth. The wealth belongs to Him. The wealth belongs to Him. It is as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a trust, right? He has given you a trust, and He is entrusting to see how you will spend this wealth. This is not your wealth. It might be in your possession for the time being, but it's not yours. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the most preferred dua for the Muslim to say during the Hajj and during all times, where the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us to say, La ilaha illallah wahdahu, la sharika la, lahul mulk wa lahul hamd. All the mulk of the dunya, everything. And I'm talking about things that you don't really even understand until necessarily you have that thing. Your wealth, like your money, sure. you know, when you come to this, you know, your spouse, your children, your family, your friends, anything that is of this dunya belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here's the difference, that when it is taken away from you, it is not as painful. It's not as painful because you understand that that thing never really belonged to you. It belonged to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He gives it when He